Hey guys, welcome to today's video on how to maintain your lettering practice. I'm going to give you 5 tips that I started off with to keep practicing my lettering. It's always easy to start a new skill or want to learn something and be motivated, but once you have to get into the tedium of daily practices or relatively frequent practices, it can get a little bit boring and really hard to maintain. So when I first started lettering, I had set myself a challenge, and this challenge was to letter one piece every day. And I would post it on Instagram as a way to hold myself accountable, even though I had like 10 followers at the time. So it wasn't about like growing my followers or having a community or whatever. It was really just a way to keep myself accountable because I can always go back and see whether or not I accomplished my goal for that day. And it didn't have to be a long quote, it didn't have to be a quote, it could just be a single word or a couple words, just whatever it is. I just had to letter every day because I knew that consistent practice, and personally for myself to do something every day, it would make it into a habit. It would make it a lot easier to maintain. And so that was what challenge I set for myself. Now, whatever challenge you decide to set for yourself, it doesn't have to be something so extreme as lettering every day because it, of course, depends on your schedule. At that time, I was a student. I had a lot more time on my hands, so I could afford to spend 5, 10, 15, 30 minutes a day lettering. But if your schedule does not allow you to do that, that's fine. You can try to set a schedule of lettering once a week or maybe like twice, 3 times a week. And it doesn't have to be half an hour or a whole hour. It can just be like 15 minutes of practice. But whatever you set yourself to do, make sure you write it down and that you do it. So the next tip I have is to make your practice a habit. And this is also part of the reason why I set that challenge of like daily lettering, because that becomes a habit for me. I feel like I can do it every day, and if I don't do it that day, it kind of feels weird. It's like if you don't brush your teeth one day, your teeth feel dirty. So at a certain point, because I've been lettering every day, it just feels like a part of my life. And that's what you want it to become. You want it to take less effort and less brain power for you to start practicing. It's more kind of like muscle memory where the more you do a letter, the more you learn how to ride a bike and ride a bike, that like it just becomes part of your body. And you don't have to think about it. You know how to swim, you know how to get on a bike and ride it. So this is important. It's also one of probably the hardest part, making it into a habit, because it does take time to build up that muscle memory or that habit. And so you have to have that patience and you have to do it. And it's not always the easiest. But if you think about it, the plus side to doing it every day or to having consistent practice and becoming a habit is that your letters become fairly consistent. I don't even have to actually sketch out my letters anymore. I might, like, as you can see on these, I like to write out my quote or my title or my whatever in pencil first, but I don't do this lettering with the pencil. Instead, I just go straight into pen. So the more you practice, the more it becomes muscle memory, the easier it is to letter. Next up is to set up a pre-practice ritual. And I can't remember where I heard this advice, but it is definitely something that I like to do because it makes my brain and my body realize that this is now time to practice. So I can set aside my distractions, set aside whatever I was working on, and I'm going to practice now. So my ritual generally is, because my desk gets pretty messy throughout the day, I like to clear a little space a lot of space. I put my keyboard away, I put my mouse to the side, and I grab my journal, the pens or whatever material I'm using that day, watercolor, markers, whatever, and I set it in that little space that I just cleared. Then I pop in my earphones, turn on a podcast, a TV show, or an audiobook, something I can listen to while I am practicing, and I start lettering or doing watercolor, whatever I want to practice that day. And this, like, it's not a very long ritual, it's fairly quick, depending on how messy my desk is, but once I know and I start clearing my desk and grabbing my materials, I know that it is time for practice. So yeah, set up a little ritual for yourself. It doesn't have to be anything complex, whatever is easiest, and Do it every time before you start your practice, and at some point it'll become like a trigger for you. All right, next is to make it as easy as possible, because I know a lot of obstacles that people talk about are like, I don't know what to letter. And so you want to decide what your obstacles are, and you want to try to address them before you start lettering. So first of all, if it's I don't know what to letter, there's so many resources out there, especially on Instagram, for like lettering challenges. I have one going called Sarcastic Lettering Challenge, and when I first started, I did Sassy and Classy Lettering Challenge, and it just made it so much easier because they had prompts for every day of the month, and then they started a new one the next month and the following month, so I never had to think about what to letter. I could just find the prompt for that date and do it. And I know a lot of people think that, I don't have the inspiration to do it, but that's not important. You have to make yourself letter even if you don't have the feeling or the inspiration, because again, it's muscle memory, it's a habit. And so when you do find a quote that you're very inspired to do, it'll come easier. Finally, it's give it 5 minutes. So sometimes you just don't feel like lettering. You don't have the practice, you're not in the mood, you're very busy, work is like stressful. But what you want to do is to just set a timer for 5 minutes and give yourself that 5 minutes to practice. And sometimes you'll find that you want to continue even after the 5 minutes is up. Other times you don't want to, and that's okay, but you got like 5 minutes of practice in that day. So you succeeded in your challenge. So just give it 5 minutes instead of watching 5 minutes of that movie or of that TV show. Instead, letter. And finally, I know I said 5 tips, but I'm going to give you one bonus tip, and this is to be kind to yourself and to forgive yourself. Sometimes, like I said before, you're very busy with work or you're very stressed and you're just not in the mood to practice, and no matter what you do, you just can't get yourself to do it. That's fine. Life happens, things get in the way, and you don't want to beat yourself up over not being able to practice that day. Instead, acknowledge that today it's not going to happen, and go and do whatever else you want to do. Binge watch that TV show, read a book, go for a walk, whatever makes you feel good. And then the next day, or whenever your next practice session is, come back to it. You don't want to make yourself so unhappy with your lettering practice that you stop practicing. And it's okay to take a break. We always need a break once in a while. We need to recharge our creative energy. We need to recharge just our energy in general. And lettering does sometimes take, especially in the beginning, it takes some energy. So this is probably one of the most important tips that I can offer, which is just to be kind to yourself and love yourself.